My name is Hattie Jackson. I am 68 years old, and my husband Leroy was buried just last week. The grief was so thick I could barely breathe. I hosted our first Sunday dinner without him, hoping the familiar routine would comfort my son Marcus. Instead, my daughter-in-law Chantelle looked at me across my own dining room table and delivered the final blow. "Now that your husband is dead, Hattie," she said, her voice as cold as the ice in her water glass, "grieve, pack your bags, and never come back." I turned to my son, waiting for him to defend me. He just stared at his plate, took a bite of food, and nodded. "The house was never really yours anyway, Mom." They thought I was just a foolish old woman, weakened by grief, easy to discard. They thought I would cry. They thought I would beg. I didn't say a word. I just stood up, went upstairs, packed a single bag, and walked out the front door. But they forgot who I am. They forgot who we were. And they had no idea that the very next morning I was going to the bank, and I was about to remind them. Before I continue my story, please leave a comment telling us where you are watching from, and subscribe for more stories about women who know their worth. The only sound in my dining room was the scrape of a fork against my good china. The plates Leroy and I bought for our 20th anniversary. It had been 1 week since the funeral, 1 week since I'd buried my husband of 45 years. At 68, I was learning the anatomy of silence. It was a cold, heavy thing that sat in Leroy's empty chair at the head of the table. I scooped a piece of fried chicken onto Marcus's plate. My son, he always loved my fried chicken. "Eat, baby," I said, my voice sounding rusty to my own ears. "You need your strength." Marcus, my only child, 45 years old, just nodded. He didn't look at me. He just pushed his mashed potatoes around with his fork. He'd been avoiding my eyes all evening. Across from him, his wife Chantelle set down her glass of white wine. Her French-tipped nails clicked softly on the glass. She was 43 white and always looked calculating. "Hattie," she began. She never called me Mom. "I'm glad we're all together. We need to talk about the arrangements." I stopped chewing. The way she said arrangements sent a chill right through my sweater. "What arrangements, Chantelle?" She glanced at Marcus. A quick, sharp look. An order. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mom, I know this is hard. I know you're grieving, but Dad is gone now. And this house, it's just too big for you to be in all alone." I put my own fork down. "What are you trying to say, Marcus? This is my home. This has been our home for 40 years, right here in our neighborhood in Atlanta." "Well, technically," Chantelle chimed in, picking up her wine, "Marcus and I were reviewing the paperwork." That's when she said it. The line that changed everything. She looked at me, no sympathy in her eyes, only impatience. "Now that your husband is dead, Hattie, grieve, pack your bags, and never come back." The room went quiet. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I didn't look at Chantelle. I looked at my son. I looked at Marcus, the boy I raised, the man I loved. I waited for him to stand up, to slam his fist on the table, to tell his wife she had lost her mind, to apologize for her cruelty. He just sat there. "Marcus," I said. My voice was a whisper. "Marcus, what is she talking about?" He kept his eyes on his plate. He picked up his fork and pushed a piece of chicken around. He wouldn't look at me, and then he nodded. She's right, Mom." He finally looked up, but his eyes were cold. "Empty. The house, it was never really yours anyway." The words didn't make sense. It was like he was speaking a foreign language. What do you mean, never mine? Your father and I, we bought this house together." "That's not what the papers say," Chantelle cut in, her voice full of false sympathy. She reached across the table and put her pale hand on Marcus's. "Honey, you should explain." Marcus cleared his throat, gaining confidence from her touch. "Mom, we need to sell it. The market is really strong right in this neighborhood." "Sell it." "We have a business opportunity," Chantelle said quickly. "A new tech venture. We need the capital to invest." Marcus added, It's complicated, Mom. It's high tech. You wouldn't understand it." "You wouldn't understand it." They thought I was stupid. Just an old woman who cooked and cleaned. They forgot I ran the books for Hattie and Leroy's community properties for 40 years. I understood numbers better than both of them combined. "This is my house," I said, my voice shaking with a cold fury. "No, Hattie, it's not," Chantelle said. She was smiling now, a full triumphant smile. "We checked the deed. Leroy bought it in his name, back in the 80s. I guess he never saw the need to add you." She got up and walked over to her designer handbag. She pulled out a folded document. And he updated his will. She slid the paper across the table. It wasn't our old, soft-edged will. This was new, crisp. He left the house, and everything in it, to Marcus, his sole heir. I stared at the signature. It looked like Leroy's, but shaky. Wrong. "When?" I whispered. "Does it matter?" Chantelle said. "The point is, the house is ours now, and we need you to leave." Leave. Tonight. That one word hung in the air. Tonight. Not in a week. Not after I've had time to grieve. Tonight. "We have the appraisers coming tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp," Chantelle said, picking up her wine glass again. "And honestly, it's just better if you're not here. It would be awkward." The shock was so profound it burned away the tears. All that was left was a cold, quiet anger. They were right. I was 68. I was a widow. But I was not weak, and I was not foolish. They looked at my grief and saw an opportunity. They looked at my age and saw incompetence. They had forgotten who I was. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just stood up from the table. The sudden movement made Marcus flinch. "Mom, you're really leaving." His voice was uncertain, as if he'd expected me to beg. "You told me to leave," I said. My voice was calm. It didn't even tremble. Chantelle's smug smile faltered for just a second, surprised by my quick compliance. I walked past them out of the dining room. I went up the stairs, my hand on the smooth oak banister that Leroy and I had sanded together. The sound of my own footsteps echoed in the house. In our bedroom, my bedroom, I pulled my old blue suitcase from the top of the closet, the one we'd taken to Niagara Falls for our 40th anniversary. I opened it on the bed that still smelled faintly of him. I packed mechanically: the black dress from the funeral, 3 sweaters, my good walking shoes, the photo of Leroy from my nightstand. I folded the old soft wool sweater he always wore on cold mornings and held it to my face for just a second. Then I laid it gently on top. I zipped the bag. Marcus was standing in the hallway, leaning against the wall, looking like a sick child. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the carpet. I walked right past him. Chantelle was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. She was standing there with her arms crossed, a look of pure, satisfied victory on her face. She looked like she'd just won a prize. I dragged my suitcase down the wheels, thudding on each wooden step. 1, 2, 3. Each sound a memory. Simone learning to walk on these stairs, Marcus tumbling down them when he was 6, Leroy carrying me up them. I stopped at the bottom. Chantelle just stood there, blocking my path to the door. She didn't move. She just held out her hand. Her nails were perfect. Red. "Keys," she said. I looked at her outstretched pale hand. A hand that had never scrubbed this floor, never planted a flower in that yard, never held Leroy's hand as he was dying. I pulled the keychain from my pocket. It took me a moment to work the heavy brass house key off the ring. I placed it directly into her palm. Her skin was cool. "Thank you for dinner," I said. I walked around her. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase. I opened my front door. The cold November air hit my face. I stepped out onto the porch. I didn't look back. I heard the door slam shut behind me, and then loud and final in the night air. I heard the sound of the deadbolt clicking into place. They had locked me out of my own life. I sat in my 10-year-old Honda Civic for a long time. I don't know how long. 10 minutes. An hour. The street was dark. The house behind me, my house, was dark. My hands were shaking so hard on the steering wheel, I couldn't put the key in the ignition. My first thought was to drive to my sister Pearl's house across town. I could cry on her couch. She would hold me and curse Marcus's name. But I stopped myself. That's exactly what they expected me to do. Chantelle would call Pearl in the morning, her voice dripping with fake concern, asking if poor Hattie had shown up. They wanted me to run to family. They wanted me to be a weeping, hysterical old woman. They wanted to know exactly where I was so they could continue to control me. I would not give them the satisfaction. I turned the key. The engine sputtered, then caught. I didn't drive toward Pearl's neighborhood. I drove downtown. I found a Holiday Inn on a busy street, a place with bright lights and anonymous doors. I walked to the counter, pulling my single suitcase behind me, my back as straight as I could make it. The young man at the desk looked tired. "One room," I said. My voice was steady. "For how long, ma'am?" "A week." I paid in cash. The room smelled like bleach and stale coffee. It was clean. It was safe. I walked inside, locked the deadbolt, and fastened the chain. I sat on the edge of the stiff, patterned bedspread. The shaking finally stopped. The grief for Leroy was still there, a heavy, cold stone in my gut. But now something else was moving in beside it. A cold, hard, calculating anger. They thought I was finished. They thought I was stupid. They thought they had won. I opened my purse. My hands were perfectly steady now. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the number I knew by heart. It rang twice. Grandma Simone, my granddaughter. Her voice was sleepy, confused. "Grandma, it's like 11 o'clock. Is everything okay?" I took a breath. "Simone, baby, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your parents, they just kicked me out of the house." Silence. Just the faint, staticky sound of a college dorm room 1,000 miles away in Washington, D.C. Then her voice sharp and suddenly wide awake. "What kicked you out? I'm booking a flight. I'll be home tomorrow." "No," I said it firmly. "No, you stay right where you are. I don't need you here, baby. I need you there. I need you to work." Another pause. "Grandma, what are you talking about?" I leaned forward even though I was alone in the room. "Simone, are you still monitoring your father's computer like you told me you did last Christmas?" The silence stretched. I heard her take a shaky breath. "Grandma, why?" "Because they're using a fake Will Simone. They're trying to steal everything. The house, the company, everything your grandfather and I built." I think so," she whispered. "I still have access. What do you need?" I closed my eyes, picturing the safe deposit box at the bank. "I need the original will, baby. I need you to find where they hid the money. I need everything." I slept in my clothes. I was up at 6 a.m. The anger had burned away the exhaustion, leaving a sharp, clear focus. I drank 2 cups of bad hotel coffee, put on my Sunday coat, and walked out the door. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the Unity Community Bank. This wasn't some cold glass tower downtown. This was our bank, the one Leroy and I had trusted for 30 years. David Henderson, the branch manager, saw me from his office. He's a good man, 60 years old. Sharp suit, always had a kind word. He came right out, his face full of sorrow. "Hattie," he said, taking both my hands. "Oh, Hattie, I am so sorry to hear about Leroy. He was a pillar of this community, a great man." "Thank you, David. He always said you were the first one to believe in us." I remembered me and Leroy sitting in this very lobby back in 1982, terrified, asking a much younger David for the loan to start Hattie and Leroy's community properties. He'd approved it when no one else would. His face grew serious. "Hattie, I was just about to call you. Please come into my office." I followed him in. He closed the door. The sound-proofed click felt final. I sat down. "What is it, David?" He sat across from me, folding his hands on his desk. "Hattie, Marcus was here. He came in yesterday afternoon, just before closing." My blood went cold. "Marcus, why?" David looked down at his desk. "He brought paperwork, Hattie, a new will, and a power of attorney. He has frozen all of your joint accounts." I stared at him. "What?" "He froze the main checking account, the joint savings, even the retirement accounts you held with Leroy. Everything. He has effectively locked you out of your own money. I couldn't speak. My savings, my pension deposits, everything. Gone. David, he can't, I finally said. I'm his mother. I was Leroy's wife. David's face was grim. The papers he brought, they look legal, Hattie. The will names him the sole executor, and the power of attorney. I'm so sorry, I checked the signature date. He paused, and I knew the next words would be the ones that truly mattered. Hattie, it was signed 3 days before Leroy passed away. I took the liberty of calling the hospice nurse. His file for that day shows he was on a high-dose morphine drip. He was barely conscious. I didn't hear anything else he said. Chantelle. This wasn't a sudden, greedy impulse. This was a plan. They had gone to my dying husband's bedside. They had put a pen in his hand while he was drugged and grieving, and had him sign his life, my life away. They thought they had taken everything. They thought I was penniless. David Henderson leaned back in his leather chair, his face a mask of professional regret. Hattie, based on these documents, my hands are tied. The accounts are frozen until the probate court validates this new will. He was telling me I was penniless. He was telling me my son and daughter-in-law had won. I felt the anger burn clean and cold. They thought of everything. The will, the power of attorney, the accounts. But they didn't know everything. I took a long, slow breath. I let the silence sit in the room. Then I looked David right in the eye. I didn't come here for those accounts, David. I came here for my safe deposit box. David's expression didn't change for a second. Then slowly, a small smile touched the corner of his mouth. Ah, he said. He understood immediately. The safe deposit box, of course. He stood up suddenly, all business again. A safe deposit box is not a bank account, Hattie. It's private property. And this trash power of attorney they brought in, it makes no mention of it. It only grants Marcus access to financial accounts. He leaned in his voice low. He can't touch it. Only you can. He led me from his office through the quiet lobby and toward the heavy steel door of the vault. The air grew colder as we approached. He pulled out his master key. You know the drill, Hattie, he said kindly. I pulled my own small silver key from my purse, the key I'd carried for 40 years. He inserted his key. I inserted mine. There was a heavy thunk as the tumblers moved. David pulled the long metal box from the wall and carried it to a small private viewing room. He set it on the table. Take all the time you need, he said, and quietly shut the door, leaving me alone. I sat there for a moment, just staring at the box. This was it. I lifted the lid. There were no diamonds, no gold bars. Chantelle would have been disappointed. Inside there was only paper. My fingers, trembling just slightly, pulled out the first file. Last Will and Testament, Leroy Washington and Hattie Jackson, 1985. The real will, our will, the one that named me as the primary heir and executor with Marcus to take over only after I was gone. I set it aside. My hand went to the next file, the thick one. Articles of Incorporation. Hattie and Leroy's Community Properties, 1982. I opened it. And there it was. The page I had typed myself on our old Smith Corona typewriter. Founding partner, Leroy Washington, 50% share. Founding partner, Hattie Jackson, 50% share. I ran my finger over my own name. Hattie Jackson. Chantelle and Marcus thought I was just the wife. They thought I was just some old woman who cooked his dinners and raised his son. They forgot. I wasn't just the wife. I was the partner. I owned half of everything. They hadn't just kicked a grieving widow out of her house. They had tried to defraud their business partner. I was not just the woman who made the cakes. I was the boss. Underneath the company papers, at the very bottom of the metal box, was a thick, yellowed envelope. My name was written on the front in Leroy's strong, familiar handwriting. For Hattie. In case. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. This was a message from him. A final word. I unfolded the pages. "Hattie, my love," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I'm gone. And it means Chantelle has done the very thing I was afraid of. Baby, I am so sorry. And I need you to be careful." I had to stop and take a breath. I could almost hear his voice in the quiet vault. "She is a snake, Hattie. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to break Marcus's heart, but I saw it. I started seeing the money disappear about 6 months ago. Small amounts at first. Consulting fees paid to companies I'd never heard of. Companies with names like C Innovations and Marcha Solutions. My God. I asked Marcus about it. He lied to me, Hattie. He looked me right in the eye and he lied. He said it was just standard business costs, but then I saw the new BMW Chantelle was driving, the designer bags, the trips I knew they couldn't afford on Marcus's salary. They weren't just spending, they were stealing. They were stealing from the company, from our company. They were stealing from you. The last part of the letter. That's the part that broke me. When I got sick, when the doctors said it was bad, she came to the hospital. She came alone. Marcus wasn't there. She brought those papers, that new will. She thought I was confused, thought I was too full of morphine to understand. She told me they were medical papers, Hattie, just permission for treatment. She held the pen for me. And I signed it. I'm so sorry. I was just so tired. I didn't have the strength to fight her anymore. I failed you. I was sobbing now, quiet tears dropping onto the paper. But I knew they would do this. The letter finished. I knew they would move fast as soon as I was gone. And I knew they would underestimate you. They think you're just a sweet old woman who bakes pies. They forgot you were always the brains, Hattie. You were the one who always read the fine print. The real will is in this box. The company papers are in this box. Our legacy, your legacy, is right here. Don't you grieve for me, Hattie. You fight. You take back what is yours. You take it all back. I love you always. Leroy. I folded the letter. My tears stopped. The shaking stopped. He knew, and he had left me the weapons. I put the letter, the real will, and the incorporation papers into my handbag. I stood up, closed the empty safe deposit box, and walked out of that vault. I was no longer a grieving widow. I was a majority partner in a 40-year-old business, and I was about to fire my son. I walked back into David Henderson's office and placed my handbag on his desk with a solid thud. The look on his face changed. The pity was gone, replaced by curiosity. He knew that look. That was the Hattie Jackson who built a company. "David," I said, my voice low and clear, "I need you to call the IRS, and then I need you to call your contact at the Atlanta Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. My son and daughter-in-law haven't just made a mistake. They have committed federal fraud." Before he could answer, I picked up my phone and dialed Simone. She answered on the first ring. "Grandma?" "I read the letter," I said. He knew everything." I'm so sorry, Grandma." "Don't be sorry, baby," I said, pacing the office. "Be ready. You told me you were monitoring them. What do you have for me?" I heard her start typing. Her voice was shaking, but not with fear, with rage. "I have everything, Grandma. I have the emails between Mom and her lawyer, that snake Peterson. They've been planning this for a year." My hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of planning?" They were discussing Grandpa's medication. "I'm sending it to you now." Peterson asks, "Is he lucid?" And Mom replies, "Not really. We have a window in the evenings after the morphine. That's when we'll do it." "Oh my God," David whispered, listening in. "It gets worse, Grandma." Simone said, her voice cracking. "They talked about you. After the funeral. Peterson said you might be a problem. And Mom wrote back. She wrote, 'Don't worry about Hattie. We'll handle Hattie. She'll be too devastated to even check the papers.' They weren't just greedy. They were evil. And Grandma," Simone's voice dropped to a whisper, "I got her browser history from the last 3 months. What did you find? She was searching, Grandma. She was searching for how to declare a senior incompetent. signs of dementia, how to get power of attorney over an unstable parent. I sat down. I had to sit down. And then I found this. She was searching for cheap care facilities near Atlanta. Grandma, she was looking for a place to put you. I took a deep breath, the air in David's office feeling thin and cold. Is there anything else, Simone? Oh yeah, Grandma, she said, and I heard the dark satisfaction in her voice. Mom, Chantelle, she's not just evil. She's stupid. What do you mean? She used Dad's computer for everything. I guess she thought it was secure. She logged right into the shell companies Dad set up for her. I have the names: C Innovations, Marcha Solutions, and Legacy Consulting. I wrote them down on a legal pad on David's desk. He looked at the names and his eyes widened. Those were the same consulting names Leroy had seen, the ones Marcus had lied about. Breathe, Hattie, David said quietly. Simone? I said, my voice tight. Can you see the accounts? Way ahead of you, Grandma. She moved the money in small chunks over the last 18 months. It looks like over $800,000. $800,000 from the Hattie and Leroy's business account right into those shell companies. David let out a low whistle. It all clicked into place. This wasn't just about the house. The house was the final piece. They had already spent a year and a half bleeding our company dry. David, I said, covering the phone, they're not trying to get money. They have the money. They're trying to wash it. He nodded, his face grim. They're using the house. They use the fake will to give Marcus the house. Then they use the stolen money to buy the house from him. The money becomes clean real estate profit. It's brilliant and disgusting. I turned back to the phone. Simone, they're going to sell the house. Wait, she said. I'm in Dad's calendar right now. He has 2 events this Saturday. The first one is at 10 a.m. Estate sale. An estate sale, I whispered, horrified. They're going to sell my memories. And the second event, Grandma, it's at noon. Meeting with buyer, final signing. They're selling it this week, I said to David. We had to move fast. Simone, I said, my mind racing, can you find out who the buyer is? It's probably listed in their emails with Peterson. I heard frantic typing. I'm searching, looking for the address. Okay, I found the sales agreement. It was in Peterson's draft folder. The buyer is... She stopped. Simone. Who is it? Her voice was flat. C Innovations, LLC. I almost laughed. It was so brazen. They're selling my house. To themselves. I sat in David's office. The evidence was all there. Fraud, forgery, money laundering, elder exploitation. We had everything. David looked at me, his lawyer instincts kicking in. Hattie, I'm filing an emergency injunction right now. We'll stop the sale, freeze everything. I held up my hand. No. He stopped his pen hovering over the legal pad. What do you mean, no? They're selling your house on Saturday. I know, I said, my voice quiet. Let them. David stared at me. Hattie, that's insane. We have to stop them. No, David. If we file now, they'll just hire lawyers. They'll hide the money deeper. Chantelle will find a way to slither out of it. They'll tie us up in court for years. I leaned forward. They want to sell the house on Saturday. Let them proceed with the sale. A slow understanding dawned on David's face. Oh, he said, you don't just want to win. You want to catch them in the act. I want to catch them red-handed, I confirmed. I want them to think they've won. I want them to feel that victory right before it's all snatched away. I picked up my phone. It was time to play the part they'd cast for me, the part of the weak, grieving, foolish old woman. I dialed Marcus's number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I called again. Hello? His voice was hesitant, annoyed. Marcus! I made my voice break. I let a sob catch in my throat. Marcus, baby, it's Mom. Mom, where are you? We've been worried sick. I heard Chantelle's voice in the background. Is it her? Ask her where she is. I'm at a motel. Marcus, a horrible little motel on the highway. I don't have any money. David, he told me the accounts are all frozen. I don't know what to do. I let my voice crack again. I'm so scared. Marcus was quiet. Then I heard Chantelle whispering fast and urgent. Mom. Marcus said, his voice suddenly full of fake concern. It's okay. We'll help you. We just need to sort out the estate. Mom, did Dad leave any other papers? Anything at the bank? Any other accounts? They were fishing, looking for my 50% share. I don't know, I stammered, playing my part. There's a safe deposit box. I went there, but David said I couldn't close it. He said I needed your signature too, Marcus. Something about the estate. It was a lie. A perfect, beautiful lie. I heard a sharp intake of breath. It was Chantelle. Then her voice loud and triumphant in the background. He's in. She needs him. Tell her we'll come get her. Tell her we'll handle David. Mom. Marcus was back, his voice bright. Don't you worry about David. He's just trying to scare you. We'll come get you. Where are you? We'll take care of everything. No, I said. I'm so tired. I'll just come to the sale on Saturday. I want to see the house one last time. I'll bring the box. I'll bring the key. We can sign whatever we need to then. Yes, Chantelle screamed. Yes, tell her. Yes. That's perfect, Mom, Marcus said. You just rest. We'll see you Saturday. We'll fix everything, I promise. I hung up. I looked at David. He was smiling. They bit, I said. Hattie, they swallowed the whole hook. They think you're bringing them the last piece of the puzzle, your 50% share. I know, I said. And on Saturday, I'm going to bring them the IRS instead. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. I spent all of Thursday in David Henderson's office. The room was thick with the smell of coffee and photocopies. David, I said, pointing to the bank statements Simone had sent. This is bigger than just the Atlanta police. Those are Cayman bank accounts. This is wire fraud. David nodded, his face grim. He'd been our lawyer for 30 years, but I'd never seen him look this energized. You're right, Hattie. This isn't just a family dispute. This is a federal crime. They're using interstate wires to defraud a business. So what do we do? He looked at his phone. We bring in bigger guns. You still okay with this? There's no going back once we make this call. And I thought of Leroy signing those papers in a morphine haze. I thought of Chantelle's cold voice. Make the call, David. He smiled. He picked up his desk phone and dialed a number from memory. John, David Henderson here? Yeah, it's been a while. Listen, I've got an early Christmas gift for you. He paused, listening. Oh, it's a good one. How about an $800,000 money laundering scheme runs right through the Caymans? And get this, it's being actively facilitated by a member of the Georgia Bar. David leaned back in his chair, his eyes gleaming. Yeah, that's what I thought. Can you be here in an hour? An hour later, Special Agent Miller from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division was sitting in David's office. He was a tall, no-nonsense man who looked like he'd seen everything. We didn't give him coffee. We just gave him the evidence. For 20 minutes, he silently read Simone's printouts. He studied the emails between Chantelle and her lawyer. He traced the wire transfers from Hattie and Leroy's to C Innovations. He read Leroy's letter. Finally, he looked up. This is textbook, he said. His voice was flat. Textbook asset concealment. They're systematically bleeding the company dry, and they're using the house sale as the final step to wash the money. They sell the house to themselves, the $800,000 becomes legitimate profit from a real estate sale. He looked at me. Your son and daughter-in-law are either incredibly arrogant or they think you're a complete fool." "They think I'm both," I said. "They're planning to finalize the sale on Saturday," David added. "At the house, during an estate sale." Agent Miller almost smiled. "An estate sale. That's bold. They're hiding in plain sight." I leaned forward. "Agent Miller, can you stop them?" He gathered the papers and put them neatly back into the folder. "Oh, we're not going to stop them, Mrs. Jackson." He stood up. "We're going to let them proceed. Let them get the buyer, the lawyers, and the fraudulent papers all in one room." He looked at David, then at me. "We'll be there. We want to catch them with the pen in their hands." After Agent Miller left, David and I sat in the silence of his office. The air was thick with what we'd just set in motion. "He's right," David said, pacing in front of his bookshelves. "But the IRS is only one piece of this. We need to cut the head off the snake." "You mean Chantelle?" I said. "No," David said, stopping. "I mean her lawyer, Peterson. He's the one who drafted the fake will. He's the one who knows where all the legal bodies are buried. If we take him down, Chantelle's entire defense crumbles." He picked up his phone. "I'm calling the State Bar, right now." He dialed, and his voice became formal, severe. "Yes, I need to speak with the Office of General Counsel. My name is David Henderson. I'm calling to file an ethics complaint against member James Peterson. Yes, I'll hold." He muted the phone and looked at me. "I'm telling them I have irrefutable proof that he was complicit in forging a will and actively participating in a conspiracy to commit elder exploitation." As he waited, my own phone buzzed with a text from Simone. "Grandma, I'm digging into Peterson. This guy is dirty. He's had 2 other complaints filed against him in the last 5 years, both for mishandling estate funds. Both were dismissed. He's good at covering his tracks." I texted back, "Be careful, baby." A new text popped up. "Too late. I found something better. A former legal assistant. He fired her 3 months ago, just 1 month before her pension vested. She sued for wrongful termination, but lost. I think I can convince her to talk." "What do you mean, convince her?" I texted. "Looks like he cheated her on her final severance pay, too. I'm going to send her a little anonymous email, just pointing out the accounting error, with proof." I didn't even have time to respond before David's other line rang. He looked at the caller ID, surprised, and picked it up. "David Henderson?" "Yes. Yes, Ms. Gable. I was just... You're calling me. I see." His eyes widened, and he looked right at me. "Yes, I understand completely. You'd be willing to provide a sworn affidavit about Mr. Peterson's practices in exchange. Yes, I believe we can arrange for immunity. Can you be here in 30 minutes? He hung up the phone slowly. That, he said, was Peterson's former legal assistant, Ms. Gable. She said she just received an anonymous email that opened her eyes. He shook his head. "Your granddaughter is a force of nature, Hattie." "No," I said, a small cold smile on my face. "She's just a Jackson, and now we have an insider. Chantelle's entire legal defense just fell apart." The trap was set. The IRS was in position. David's team was ready. Simone, my brilliant granddaughter, was watching their digital every move. Now I just had to make sure the rats came for the cheese. I needed to make sure Marcus and Chantelle still believed I was a broken, confused old woman. I needed them to walk into that house on Saturday with all the arrogance in the world. I waited until Thursday night. I sat in my hotel room and practiced letting my voice tremble. I practiced sounding weak. Then I dialed Marcus's number. He picked up on the second ring. "Mom!" His voice was sharp, nervous. He was wondering where I was. "Marcus!" I let my voice crack. I forced a little sob into my throat. "Marcus, baby, I'm so scared." "Mom! Mom, where are you? We've been worried sick." I heard the lie, and behind him, I heard the faint sound of a television. They weren't worried. They were waiting. "I'm at a motel, Marcus. One of those cheap ones. Off the highway. I don't have any money. David Henderson from the bank, he called me." "What?" I heard a chair scrape. I knew Chantelle was now listening on speaker. "What did David say to you? I don't understand, baby. I whispered. He said something about company shares. He said I owned half of everything. He told me not to sign anything, Marcus. He said you were in trouble. I'm so confused." I heard a sharp, muffled sound. Chantelle hissing in the background. I could just make out her words. "She knows," he told her. "Tell her he's lying. Tell her he's trying to steal her money. Ask her about the box. Ask her if she has the box." Marcus came back on his voice suddenly slick and reassuring. Mom, listen to me. David is lying to you. He's just an old bitter man. He's trying to scare you. He's trying to get his hands on Dad's estate. He hates our family." He paused, his voice thick with fake sympathy. "Mom, the box you mentioned to me once, from the safe deposit box, did you get it?" "Yes," I whimpered. It's right here, in the room with me. I didn't know what else to grab. I was so scared." I heard a sharp intake of breath. That was Chantelle. She thought I had the original incorporation papers. She thought I was holding the keys to the kingdom. "Good," Marcus said, his voice high with relief. "That's good, Mom. That's really good. You did the right thing. Don't listen to David." But he said, "He doesn't matter, Mom," Marcus said, his confidence surging. You bring that box, and the key. You bring it to the house on Saturday, for the estate sale. We'll be there. Our lawyer, Mr. Peterson, will be there. We will handle David. Handle him. Don't you worry about a thing, Mom. You just need to sign the last few papers, that's all. Just sign the papers and it will all be over. We can finally put Dad to rest. We can take care of you. I promise." I hung up the phone. His voice was so sickeningly sure, so confident. They bought it. They bought every single word. They really thought I was a terrified, stupid old woman hiding in a cheap motel, clutching the one document they needed to complete their theft. They had no idea what was waiting for them on Saturday. They thought I was bringing them my surrender. They were wrong. I was bringing them their judgment. We had one final piece to confirm. Agent Miller had his case for fraud, but I wanted to make absolutely sure they were walking into that house on Saturday to sign the final papers. We needed to confirm the sale. "David," I said, "they're arrogant, but Chantelle is greedy. Let's test her." David understood. He picked up his phone and called another colleague, a junior associate named James. "James," he said, "I need you to play a role. You are a high-roller real estate agent from New York. You have a client who wants a house in that neighborhood, and he will pay cash, a lot of cash." I sat in David's office while James made the call on speakerphone. We had Chantelle's personal cell number from Simone's files. It rang 3 times. "Hello?" Chantelle's voice was bright professional. "Is this Mrs. Washington?" James said, his voice suddenly deep and fast-talking like a man who didn't have time to waste. "This is she." "Good. My name is James Price. I represent a cash buyer from New York. I hear your property on Linden Street is for sale. My client is prepared to offer $800,000. Cash. We can close in 24 hours. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. 800,000. That was 50,000 more than the fake price they were selling it to themselves for. I'm sorry," Chantelle stammered. I think it's already under contract. I have a buyer." "My client offers 850,000, James said instantly without even pausing. 850. All cash. You'll have the money by Monday. Does your current buyer beat that?" The silence was deafening. I could hear Chantelle's mind spinning. Greed was fighting with her own plan. $850,000 was real money right now. I have to call you back," she finally said, her voice high-pitched with panic. "I have to check with my husband." "You have 1 hour," James said, and hung up. David and I just looked at each other. "The bait is in the water," he said. We didn't have to wait long. My cell phone buzzed. It was Simone. "Grandma," she whispered, "you are a genius. They are screaming at each other right now." "What are they saying, baby?" "Mom is furious. She's yelling, 'Why are we selling for $750 when this man is offering $850? We're losing $100,000, Marcus.'" "And your father? What did he say?" Simone laughed a cold, bitter sound. "He's an idiot, Grandma." He just yelled back at her. He said, "Because we are the buyer, Chantelle. We're selling it to C Innovations. It's how we wash the money. Don't you get it? We can't sell it to a real person." I closed my eyes. He said it out loud. "He did, Grandma," and I recorded the whole thing. I spent Friday night pacing the hotel room, the cheap carpet rough under my feet. The IRS was ready. David was ready, but I was waiting for my real partner. At 10 p.m., a soft tap came at my door. Our old signal. I pulled Simone inside. She was 19, but her eyes were all business. She dropped a heavy backpack. "Sorry I'm late, Grandma. I had to fly into Macon and drive a rental. No tracking." She unzipped the bag and pulled out her toys, a laptop, a tiny projector, and a small flat microphone, a wire. "They moved Dad's big TV to the living room," I told her, catching her plan. "Even better," she said, her smile cold. "More people will see it. While you're in the study, I'll use the bathroom and plug this in. It's connected to my server. When I hit play, everyone at that estate sale is going to see Mom's emails and bank records." She held up the wire. "And this is for you. We need to record their confession." At 8 a.m. Saturday, we were the strangest group in the Waffle House. Me, David, Agent Miller from the IRS, 2 local officers, and Simone hidden under a baseball cap. David laid out the plan. Hattie goes in at 11. They'll take her to the study to sign the fake papers. Peterson, their dirty lawyer, will be there. Hattie, you'll be wearing the wire. "And I'll be in the living room," Simone said, her voice low, "setting up the family slideshow. The moment they threaten you, the moment they confess, I broadcast everything." Agent Miller sipped his black coffee. "My team will be in plain clothes browsing. We need a signal, Mrs. Jackson. When we know you have the confession." I looked down at my wedding ring. "When you hear me say Leroy, he would be so disappointed. That's your signal. That's when you move in." I made one last call. "Clara Hattie Jackson, I need your prayer circle. On my front lawn, at 11. Clara Thompson, my neighbor, understood immediately. "Hattie, you're up to something. We'll be there. We'll witness." At 10:30, I pulled up to my street. The lawn, my lawn, was a circus. Strangers were picking over my life, my wedding china on a card table, Leroy's tools in a box marked $5. My phone buzzed. A text from Simone. "I'm in. Bathroom window was unlocked. Projector is live. Waiting for you. Be careful." I looked at my house, the place Leroy built. They were selling my memories. I taped the microphone under my coat. I put my hand on the car door. "Let's go, Leroy," I whispered. "Let's take back our house." I stepped out of the car. The morning sun felt too bright, and the sound of strangers laughing and bartering on my front lawn, it was obscene. I saw my reflection in my own living room window, an old woman in a Sunday coat walking toward a yard sale that was selling her own life. I took the first step onto the grass. "Hattie! Oh, Lord Jesus! Hattie!" Clara Thompson's voice boomed across the yard. She dropped a box of my good crystal and hurried over, her arms wide. "Child, we heard you were sick. We heard you'd been taken." She wrapped me in a hug so tight it almost hurt. It felt real. "I'm okay, Clara," I whispered, feeling the warmth of her. "We've been praying for you, Hattie." Another woman, Sister Beatrice from the choir, joined us. Then Mr. Daniels from 2 doors down. Within seconds, I was surrounded. 10, 15 of them. My neighbors, my church family. They formed a solid wall around me, a living, breathing shield of floral dresses and Sunday suits. "We heard you were in trouble," Clara whispered in my ear, her hand patting my back. "We told them we were here for the charity giveaway." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Chantelle. She was standing on my porch next to Leroy's rocking chair, a rocking chair with a bright yellow sold tag on it. Her face was a mask of pure fury. She saw me, and she saw the crowd around me. She saw I wasn't alone. Marcus stumbled out of the front door, his face pale and sweaty. He saw me, saw the crowd, and looked like he was going to be sick. This wasn't part of their plan. They wanted me to arrive alone, confused and broken. I saw Chantelle march down the porch steps. She pushed past a man holding my floor lamp. "Hattie?" Her voice was a high-pitched, fake sweet sound that didn't match the venom in her eyes. "There you are. We were so worried." She tried to grab my arm to pull me away from the group. Clara Thompson subtly shifted, blocking her path. "Chantelle," I said, my voice quiet, "you're selling my memories." "We're just tidying up like we discussed," she hissed, the smile frozen on her face. She leaned in close. "You need to come inside, now. We have those papers for you to sign." I turned to Clara and my neighbors. I placed my hand on Clara's arm. "Thank you all for coming. I'll be fine. I just need to go inside and take care of some family business." I gave Clara a look. She understood. She and the others stepped back, but they didn't leave. They stayed on the lawn watching, an audience. I walked toward the front door. Grandma Simone, she slipped out from behind a large man and fell into step beside me, her baseball cap pulled low. Chantelle stopped dead on the porch, her eyes narrowed. "What is she doing here? I thought you were in D.C. "She came home," I said simply. "She's coming inside with me." "No," Chantelle said. "This is private, just family." I looked at her, my hand on the doorknob of my own house. "She's coming to help me read Chantelle. You know, my eyes have been so bad lately. I'm just a confused old woman. I can't be expected to read all that legal print by myself, can I?" Chantelle stared at me, then at Simone. I could see the greed warring with her suspicion. She was so close. The papers were inside. The box I'd promised was in my handbag. She finally let out a frustrated huff. "Fine, whatever. Just get in here. Let's get this over with." She held the door open, practically pulling us inside. As I stepped over the threshold, Simone glanced at the big screen TV in the living room, and I saw her give the smallest, almost invisible nod. Chantelle shoved us into Leroy's study and closed the door, shutting out the noise of the yard sale. The room was just as I'd left it. Almost. That sleazy lawyer Peterson was sitting behind Leroy's desk, my husband's desk. He was sitting there like he owned the place, a stack of papers arranged perfectly in front of him. On the wall, the big 60-inch television they'd mounted for business meetings was dark, silent. "Hattie," Chantelle said, her voice all business now. "This is Mr. Peterson. He's just going to help us finalize everything." "We've met," I said. My eyes locked on the man who had helped them forge a dying man's will. Simone. My brilliant Simone didn't miss a beat. She drifted over to the corner near the TV, pulling her phone and a charging cable from her pocket. "Oh man, my battery's almost dead," she muttered, fumbling with the outlets behind the TV stand. Chantelle and Peterson didn't even look at her. Their eyes were on me, and my handbag. While they were focused on me, I saw Simone's hand quickly expertly plug a small black device into the TV's empty HDMI port, then plug a second cable into her own laptop, which was hidden in her open backpack on the floor. To them, she was just a teenager addicted to her phone. "Let's get this over with," Peterson said, his voice slick and impatient. He pushed the stack of papers across the polished wood of Leroy's desk. "This," he said, tapping the first page, "is the final waiver for your shares in the company. Just a formality. Sign here." I looked at the line. It would give them everything. My 50%. My life's work. "And this," he pushed another document over, "is the authorization for Marcus to access and close the safe deposit box at Unity Bank. Standard procedure. Sign here." I didn't move. Chantelle was practically vibrating with impatience. Her eyes darted from the papers to my handbag. "And the box?" she asked, her voice a little too high, her eyes wide with greed. You brought the box with the other papers." I slowly, deliberately lifted my old leather handbag and placed it on the desk, right on top of their fraudulent documents. Click. The sound was soft, but in that room it felt like a gunshot. "It's in here," I said. "All of them. The incorporation papers. The old will. Everything." Chantelle's hand actually reached out, her fingers twitching as if to grab the bag from me. I put my own hand on top of it. "But," I said, looking at Peterson, I think I should read these first. My husband, Leroy, he always told me to read the fine print." Chantelle's mask of the concerned daughter completely shattered. "We don't have time for that." She snapped, her voice loud and ugly. "We have buyers waiting. We have appraisers. Just sign the papers, old woman. Old woman." I looked at Marcus. He was standing by the window, wringing his hands, looking at his shoes. He said nothing. "Chantelle," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "What did you just call me? Just sign it," she shouted, stabbing her perfect red fingernail at the signature line. "Sign it now." "Old woman." I looked up, letting a mask of confused hurt settle on my face. Is that what you think of me, Chantelle?" Marcus finally moved. He came around the desk and put a heavy hand on my shoulder. It was meant to be comforting, but it felt like a shackle. "Mom, please," he said, his voice low and pleading. Don't make this complicated. We're just trying to take care of things, like Dad wanted." I looked up from his hand on my shoulder all the way up to his face. I looked him dead in the eyes that used to be so full of life, so much like Leroy's. Now they were just weak. "You're not taking care of anything, Marcus," I said, my voice quiet, but carrying in the small room. "You are throwing away 45 years. You are throwing away your father's legacy. You are throwing away your mother." I let that hang in the air. All of it. Just for money. Marcus flinched, his hand dropping from my shoulder. It's not like that." "Enough!" Chantelle slammed her hand flat on Leroy's desk. The sound echoed. Peterson jumped. "I have had enough of this emotional garbage," she screamed, her face turning a mottled red. "We are done playing this game." She leaned across the desk, her face inches from mine. "You will sign that paper right now, or so help me God. Hattie, I will drag you into court. I will tell everyone how you've lost your mind. I will bring in doctors. I will prove you are incompetent." She jabbed her finger at the paper. "Your son will be your legal guardian by Monday. Now, sign it." The room was vibrating with her rage. I looked at her, this screaming, greedy woman who had poisoned my family. I looked at Marcus, my son, who was standing by the window, trembling, saying nothing. Then I looked at the hidden wire on my coat. I took a slow, deep breath. I stood up. My voice was not a whisper. It was loud, clear, and full of 45 years of love and sudden terrible judgment. "Leroy," I said, speaking to the room, to the wire, to my husband. "Leroy, he would be so disappointed." The words hung in the air. "Leroy, he would be so disappointed." As soon as I said it, the study door burst open. It didn't just open, it slammed back against the wall with a force that shook the room. David Henderson stood in the doorway. "Excuse me," he said, his voice booming through the house. "I believe you're interrupting a business meeting." Behind him stood 2 uniformed Atlanta police officers, and between them, a tall, stone-faced man in a dark suit, Agent Miller, from the IRS. Chantelle, Marcus, and Peterson froze. Chantelle's hand was still pointed at the paper. Marcus looked like he'd seen a ghost. Peterson. He was the first to find his voice. He stood up, puffing out his chest, trying to look official. "What is the meaning of this? This is a private residence. You have no right to be here. I am this family's legal counsel, and I demand you leave immediately." "Oh, we have no right," David Henderson said, stepping into the room. He walked right past Peterson and stood beside me. He pointed a finger not at Peterson, but directly at me. "We are here," David announced to the room, "at the express invitation of the owner of this property, Mrs. Hattie Jackson, the 50% co-founder and legal partner of Hattie and Leroy's Community Properties, which fully owns this house and all its assets." Chantelle just stared. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. 50%, Marcus whispered, looking at me. "That's not the will." Peterson stammered, shuffling his fake papers. The will, David scoffed, is a fraudulent document, but that's a matter for the state court. Agent Miller stepped forward then. He moved past David, his eyes locked on Chantelle and Marcus. He held up his badge. Marcus Washington, Chantelle Washington. I am Special Agent Miller with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Every word landed like a hammer blow. You are both under arrest for conspiracy to commit federal bank fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. Proof! Chantelle actually laughed. It was a high, terrified sound. You have no proof. This is ridiculous. You can't just come in here. Actually, a new voice cut through the chaos. It was Simone. She stepped out from the closet, her baseball cap still pulled low. She was holding her tablet in her hand. They do have proof, she said, her voice clear and strong. Chantelle's face went white. Simone, what are you doing? You're supposed to be in D.C.? I came home for the party, Mom, Simone said. She looked at her mother with cold, hard eyes. You know, the one where you destroy Grandma's life. You little... Chantelle lunged toward her, but before she could take 2 steps, Simone tapped a single button on her tablet. Click. The giant 60-inch television on the living room wall, the one in front of all the shoppers, the one in front of Clara Thompson and my church friends, flickered to life. The room went silent. It wasn't a reality show. The first image that flashed on the screen was an email. From Chantelle Washington to James Peterson. Subject, Riel's will. And the body of the email, big enough for everyone in the room to read, We have to move fast. He's fading. We need to get him to sign this week. And you must make sure Hattie is removed from everything. She gets nothing. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd on the lawn, who were now pressed against the windows peering inside. Clara Thompson put her hand over her mouth. That's fake, Peterson shouted, his face slick with sweat. Oh, it's real, Simone said. And there's more. She swiped. The screen changed. It was a bank statement. C Innovations, LLC. Cayman National Bank. Current balance, $800,000. Agent Miller just nodded slowly. Got him, he muttered to the officer next to him. Chantelle was hyperventilating. That's not... Marcus, tell them... Marcus was frozen, staring at the screen. And my personal favorite, Simone said, her voice dripping with ice. She swiped one last time. The screen filled with a Google search history, Chantelle's search history, how to declare a senior incompetent, signs of dementia in elderly, how to get power of attorney over an unstable parent, cheap care facilities near Atlanta, low-cost nursing homes Atlanta. The entire crowd saw it. Clara Thompson, Sister Beatrice, my neighbors. They saw in black and white that Chantelle had not only planned to steal my money, but that she had been actively searching for a cheap, faraway place to dump me like a piece of trash. Clara Thompson let out a sound. Oh, my Lord in heaven, she was trying to put Hattie away. Chantelle stared at the TV screen. Her search history, her plan, exposed for the entire neighborhood to see. Her head swiveled, her eyes wild, until they locked onto Simone, who was still standing calmly by the wall, tablet in hand. You, Chantelle whispered. You. It was the roar of an animal. She launched herself across the room, knocking over a lamp, her hands clawed, aiming for Simone's face. You little brat, I'll kill you! She never made it. The 2 uniformed officers moved instantly. They grabbed Chantelle from either side, her arms pinned behind her back with a force that made her shriek in pain. Let go of me, she screamed, thrashing against them. Chantelle Washington, one of the officers said, his voice flat and bored as he clicked the handcuffs shut. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and financial exploitation of the elderly. You can't do this, she sobbed, all the fight suddenly gone, replaced by pathetic wailing tears. I'm the victim. She's a crazy old woman. She's lying. But no one was listening. I looked away from her and looked at my son. Marcus hadn't moved. He hadn't tried to stop Chantelle. He was just staring. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, surrounded by the cheap for sale tags they had put on my life. He looked small, defeated. He looked up at his daughter, his face crumpled. "Simone," he whispered, his voice broken. "Baby, why? Why would you do this? To your own father?" The room went silent. The officers paused, holding a struggling Chantelle. Everyone, the neighbors at the window, Agent Miller David, everyone looked at Simone. My granddaughter, my 19-year-old girl, stood tall. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She walked across the room until she was standing right in front of her father. She looked down at him. "Because she is my family," Simone said, pointing one steady finger right at me. "Grandma is my family." Then she turned her gaze back to Marcus and Chantelle, and her voice was as cold and sharp as glass. "You two, you're just criminals." The officers pulled Chantelle's arms behind her back with a rough, practiced motion. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a pure, venomous hatred. She stopped struggling and twisted her head, her eyes locking on me. "You!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "You think you've won, you conniving old witch? This isn't over. I'll get out, and when I do, I'm taking everything. You hear me? Everything." One of the officers pulled her toward the door. "You have the right to remain silent," he said, but she just kept screaming my name, her threats echoing off the walls of my house. Then they turned to Marcus. He was still on the floor, crumpled against the wall. He just held his hands out, his entire body shaking. He didn't even look up as the second officer cuffed him. The moment the metal touched his skin, he just broke. A raw, choking sob tore out of his chest, the sound of a little boy. "Mom!" he cried, his face streaming with tears. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't... She told me. Mom, please, I'm sorry." I just stood there, my heart a cold, hard stone. His sorrow was real. But it was too late. It was so very late. "Mr. Peterson," Agent Miller said, turning to the lawyer who was trying to blend into the wallpaper. Peterson's face was pale, his hands shaking. I was simply providing legal counsel based on documents my client provided. I had no knowledge." "Save it," Miller said as a third officer cuffed him. "We have a sworn affidavit from your former assistant, and your name is all over the conspiracy emails. You're facing disbarment and a federal indictment. You have the right to an attorney. I'd suggest you get a good one." While the officers led my son, my daughter-in-law, and their lawyer out in handcuffs, past the shocked faces of my neighbors, Agent Miller walked to Leroy's desk. He carefully picked up the fraudulent will. He picked up the document where I was supposed to sign away my company for $1. "I'll be taking these as evidence," he said, slipping them into a plastic bag. David Henderson walked past him. He went to the front door and stepped out onto the porch facing the crowd on the lawn. "Attention, everyone," his voice boomed. "This is David Henderson, legal counsel for Mrs. Hattie Jackson." He pointed to the officers. "As you can see, a crime has been in progress. This estate sale is illegal. It was organized under fraudulent pretenses." I heard a collective gasp from my neighbors. "This property," David said, his voice full of power, "is not for sale. These items are not for sale. This is all the private property of Mrs. Hattie Jackson. We ask that you please leave the premises immediately." The sirens faded. One by one the police cars pulled away. Marcus was in one. Chantelle was in another. Peterson, the lawyer, was in a third. The sound of their departure left a ringing silence in the air. My neighbors who had crowded the lawn started to drift away. They didn't know what to say. They just looked at me, differently. Not with pity, not anymore. With a respect. They'd come for an estate sale. They'd seen a resurrection instead. My lawn. My poor lawn. It looked like a storm had passed through. My furniture was scattered everywhere. Leroy's armchair was tipped on its side. My good china was still on that flimsy card table. A yellow "sold" tag flapped on the leg of my dining room table. The evidence of their greed was everywhere. I stood on the porch steps, my legs suddenly shaking so hard I had to grab the railing. David stood on the walkway, straightening his tie, looking exhausted but satisfied. Simone was beside me. She hadn't moved. She was just watching the last police car turn the corner. "Hattie." I turned. It was Clara Thompson, my neighbor. She was walking across the grass holding a tall glass. The ice clinked. I made this for you, honey," she said, pushing the glass into my hand. It was lemonade. My goodness, I haven't seen this much drama since Reverend Brown's choir robe caught fire at Easter service. I took a sip. It was sweet and sharp and cold. It felt like the best thing I'd ever tasted. "Thank you, Clara," I whispered. She patted my arm. Her hand was warm. "You did the right thing, Hattie Jackson," she said, her voice low and firm. "Sometimes you have to clean your own house, even when the trash is your own blood. The Lord understands." She looked over at Simone, who was still watching the street. Clara just nodded a look of pure respect. "And you," she said to Simone, "you are a warrior, just like your grandma." Clara squeezed my arm one more time. "You call me if you need anything." Then she turned and walked back to her own home. I finished the lemonade, the cold glass steadying my hands. I looked at Simone, my granddaughter, 19 years old in a college sweatshirt with a laptop bag over her shoulder. She had just taken down 3 grown adults and a corrupt law firm. She had saved my life. "You did it, baby," I said. My voice was thick. "You saved us. You saved everything." Simone finally turned away from the street. She looked at me. Her eyes weren't a child's eyes anymore, but they were still kind. "No, Grandma," she said. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around my waist, burying her face in my coat. She held on tight. "I just did what you always taught me to do." I held her, stroking her hair. "What's that, baby?" She looked up at me, a small, tired smile on her face. I read the fine print. 6 months. That's how long it took for the dust to settle. For the last 45 years of my life to be reduced to legal filings and courtroom verdicts. The trial was fast. Simone's evidence, that audio recording of Marcus screaming about the money laundering Chantelle's emails about putting me in a home, it was impossible to deny. Chantelle tried, of course. She sat on the stand, dressed in a modest suit, and she cried. She told the jury that Marcus had forced her, that she was afraid of him, that she only wanted to protect Leroy's legacy. She lied right up until the very end. But you can't lie when your own email plotting to have your dying father-in-law drugged is on a giant screen for the jury to see. Chantelle got 15 years, federal prison, for conspiracy, wire fraud, and exploitation of the elderly. Her lawyer Peterson was disbarred. He was lucky he didn't face charges himself, thanks to that affidavit from his former assistant. And Marcus, my son, he took a plea deal. He cooperated fully. He pled guilty to everything, testifying against his own wife. He stood up in court, his voice shaking, and he said, "I was weak. I let her poison my mind. I betrayed my mother, and I betrayed my father's memory." The judge gave him 3 years of probation and 5,000 hours of community service. The IRS recovered all of it. The full $800,000 from those came in accounts. The first thing I did, I sold the house on Linden Street. I sold it the day the money was returned to the company. I couldn't sleep one more night in that bedroom. The memories were tainted. The walls felt like they had watched me, and I couldn't bear it. I took the money, the recovered funds, and the money from the sale, and I moved. I bought a beautiful penthouse apartment downtown, high above the city, all glass and light, a place I chose, a place with no old ghosts. And I rebuilt our company. Today I am standing in our new office. It smells like fresh paint and new carpets. The glass door has new gold lettering. It doesn't say Hattie and Leroy's anymore. It says H&S Community Properties. Hattie and Simone. I watched her, my granddaughter, 20 years old, and she's already transferred back from D.C., enrolled at Georgia State, and she is running my operations. She stood over 2 new property managers reviewing a stack of tenant leases. "No," Simone said, her voice sharp and clear. "That clause in Section 4 is too vague. We don't accept, etc. Go back and define the terms." The young man looked confused. It's just a standard lease, Ms. Simone." Simone tapped the paper with her pen. "No, it's our lease, and in this office we read every single line. My grandmother taught me that." I just stood by the door, and I smiled. The legacy was safe. The glass door to the office suite opened, and Marcus stepped in. He looked different, thinner. The expensive suits Chantelle had dressed him in were gone. He was wearing the simple green uniform of a landscaping company. He looked 10 years older, and all the weakness I'd seen in his eyes had been replaced by a deep, quiet shame. He didn't look at me. He walked straight to Simone's desk. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low, "I'm here to report. The South Complex is done." Simone looked up from her computer, her face professional. "Did you clear the debris from Building C like I asked?" "Yes, ma'am. All done." I had given him the job. After his probation officer called asking if anyone would hire him, I made an offer. The lowest position we had, managing the lawn crews for our properties. Hard outdoor manual labor, the kind of work he and Chantelle had always thought was beneath them. I stepped out of my own office. "The lawns at the South Complex look good, Marcus," I said. He flinched, not expecting me. He turned his cap in his hands. "Thank you, Mom." He wouldn't meet my eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thin white envelope. He walked over and placed it on my desk. "What's this?" I asked. It's my first paycheck." "Well, part of it." His voice was thick. "It's $50. I looked at the envelope. It's the first payment," he whispered, his eyes fixed on the floor. To pay back what I took." $50. Against 800,000. It was nothing. And it was everything. I picked up the envelope. I didn't open it. I just held it. "It's a start, Marcus," I said quietly. He just nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. He turned to leave. He clearly thought that was all. "Marcus," I said. He stopped his back to me. "I'm making your favorite tonight," I said. "Fried chicken." He turned around slowly. His face, oh, his face. He looked like that little boy again, the one who used to follow Leroy around the yard. You're inviting me to dinner?" he stammered. "Are you coming?" He nodded, the tears finally breaking and rolling down his cheeks. "Yes, Mom," he whispered. "Yes, I'll be there." Voiceover Chantelle thought I was old and weak. My son thought I was foolish. They both forgot that I was the one who built everything. They wanted to steal my legacy, but they never understood what it really was. My legacy wasn't the money in the bank. It was the resilience in my bones. And now, I'm passing that resilience on to the next generation. To camera, I got my company back. I got my self-respect back. And I'm giving my son a second chance. But I don't know if I can ever truly forgive him. What do you think? Am I doing the right thing? Bak ba jia de denjam, tui chen hin tin trin tu jui. This story shows us a powerful truth that the greedy always forget. They looked at Hattie, a 68-year-old widow, and all they saw was an obstacle. They saw her grief as a weakness. They saw her age as incompetence. They thought she was finished, a foolish old woman to be pushed aside, robbed, and locked away. But they made a fatal mistake. They forgot that a woman who has built a life, a family, and a business from nothing knows how to read the fine print. She knows how to fight. This story teaches us that true strength isn't about cruelty, it's about integrity. It shows that we must demand respect even from our own blood. Hattie's legacy wasn't just the money they tried to steal. Her true legacy was the resilience she held on to, and the strength she had already passed down to her granddaughter Simone. Together, the wisdom of age and the skills of youth proved to be an unbeatable force. They thought she was a victim. Hattie proved she was the matriarch. I took back my company, and I'm giving my son a second chance. What do you think? Am I doing the right thing?